we have to, and we have to ask the question too, to what extent are these people even capable, even with good intentions, of providing an appropriate education for our children? An African-centered education, you see, and I keep coming back to this, because one of the things that an African-centered education recognizes is the effects that history has had on the psychology of African people. And when I say the psychology of African people, I'm saying that when you play certain roles in a society, well, let me give you an example. I was telling my students the other evening, when, for instance, job discrimination occurs, you not only prevent a certain person from earning the salary that that job represents or attaining the social status that the job represents. In the long run, you really rob them of certain thinking and behavioral skills, because each occupational level carries with it certain thought patterns and patterns of perception, language usage, and other kinds of things, you see. And therefore, when you lock people out of certain roles and positions and functions in a society, you, in effect, rob them of certain intellectual capacities and abilities. So job discrimination is not only a mere act of economic discrimination, but it is really an act of creating a particular kind of thought pattern, a cognitive pattern, motivational pattern in a people. So that in maintaining black people in roles that deal with concrete activities, secondary activities, roles that are essentially servile in their nature, means that there is a mentality and a thought style that goes with this role. It means then that we inadvertently and unconsciously pass on this style to our children, which is another way the black family, as I talked about earlier, serves as an agent to maintain its own children in the same position. That is why a poor family, a mother or father, has to be very conscious when they want to move their children out of position. I'm going to get back to your question in a minute, but I just want to preface something here for a second. That's why you have to be conscious to get your children out of certain things, because unconsciously you can just pass on already what you have. Now, what am I saying then? There are certain styles of thinking that many of our children have, certain motivational orientations that come both from the African world and were accentuated in here in America. There are certain time systems that we need to be instilled that we have not studied, we do not know. And consequently, often many people with even good intentions still will produce an inadequate educational structure. So number one, we need to educate our board members and insist.
Their intentions are not good.
Yeah, and insist. I don't know whether they can do it if they had good intentions. I don't know whether they can know what a good intention is because they have no knowledge of self. You see, and you can only judge an intention in terms of where it comes from and in terms of knowing yourself. So you see, the thing is, in the other systems, we as black people have not yet decided that we would take over the certification function so that we make sure people know enough and know enough self to be in them. The other deal is then, that board needs to be educated. When you ask that question, what can we do? I don't know how many people can do it, but I'd say one thing. And this is the kind of issue we'll be discussing in our sessions. What is the role of terrorism within one's own community? In other words, the terrorist is not there to necessarily always work on the outside. The terrorist also is there to control what goes on the inside. To what degree are we, as African people, willing to build an instrument of punishment within the black community? Yeah, and that's the reality. The reason why these people do what they do is that they don't fear you, and they fear they can hide behind these white men and these white policemen, and that you can't get to them. And the other reason is that we are law-abiding, and we are afraid to go outside the law. We talk about revolution, but we want legal revolution. There's no such thing as legal revolution. We have to do what other people do, and that is we got to show them in some form or another that they will suffer as a result of going against us. And we got to know another thing. When you are poor, when we are poor as black people, you usually have only one weapon left. After you get through negotiating, you get through protesting, you get through pleading, and that is the weapon of disruption. Tearing up the system so it will not function. That's it. We have to use that weapon. That is why now people want to lay this racial harmony on us. And they want to lay this moral game on us. Because when you fill the poor with high morality and, and all this high racial harmony stuff, it will refuse to use the only weapon it has, and that weapon is to disrupt and destroy. And unless this community is ready to disrupt and is ready to be threatening and painful to those people, then, of course, we are just going to complain. That's the nature of the beast. This United States as a nation is very delicately balanced. It cannot stand disruption. It is in a tight race with Japan. It is in a tight race to try to maintain this economic balance. And right now, that's one another reason why it's feeding all this multiculturalism. It does not want us to do what? Get out of place and become disruptive. Because even in trying to deal with the disruption that we have, it diverts them and destabilizes the system and makes them available to be overrun by their enemy. And therefore, we must recognize what we have in our hands, and the few of us who can use it, because not all of us are going to use it, must then decide that it will be used. If not, then we may as well forget it.
Thank you again. Thank you.